three-part series exploring the wonders of Excel and how you may be able to use some of the functionality on your desktop to create some simple dashboards that can be used for your monitoring and analysis. So a couple of housekeeping as normal. Of course, everybody's coming in muted, and if you have questions, please chat them in the chat box. And we'll leave about 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the presentation for questions. And so, like I said, chat in your questions, and we'll take it from there. Of course, this is a third in a three-part series. Started with tables, moved on to pivot tables. And today we're going to go a little bit deeper into the weeds, talk about some of the business intelligence tools inside of Excel. I think that you're going to find that these are some of the tools that are going to address some of the issues that you're going to have with your data and joining your data as you move forward. Today is going to be a bit more of a technical presentation. We're moving on to some reasonably technical aspects of Excel. I'll go as slowly as I can. We will be posting a new database to the CTAC website because today I'm going to show you how to post data from two different data sources. We'll be using the sample database that we've been using throughout the series, and we'll add an additional bit of data that you'll be able to use to join your two data sets and build your dashboards. So we've talked about this. The goal of the series is really to give some hands-on, step-by-step instructions, give you tools to work with, and hopefully at the end of the day, you'll be inspired to move a little bit further in teaching yourself the additional skills, or find somebody in your organization that you can get trained up. It's unrealistic to believe that I can show you any more than some of the basics in the little time that we have together. But hopefully it's inspiring you to move this skill set forward, either with yourself or your organization. So we're going to talk a little bit about business intelligence today. I'm going to introduce some of the business intelligence tools, and then I'm going to do the step-by-step demonstration of how you can build a dashboard using data from two different data sources. So what is business intelligence? I use this phrase a lot. I think you're probably going to start hearing it a lot. I like this definition because it really, for me, captures all the aspects of the skills and processes that you are going to need to have in place to manage your data. And so, as the definition reads, that refers to skills, processes, and technologies, applications, and practice to support your evidence-based decision in your organization. And it really defines approaches for gathering your information, storing your information, analyzing, and providing data. And today we'll talk about each of those four areas: gathering, storing, analyzing, and providing your data. Business intelligence, then, I see this, and I like this visualization. So at the core of your business intelligence, or your core of your processes for building your dashboards, they're the same thing, building your dashboards in business intelligence. You need to gather your data. You need to clean it and have it available for you. You need to store it somewhere. It's either going to be stored in a database, it's going to be stored in your Excel files, and it's going to be stored in a data model, which we'll be looking at today. You build your visualization, you visualize your results, and then you gain insights and make decisions. So what we have been talking about since the beginning in terms of dashboards is really the process of business intelligence, how you move your information into how you take your data and move it into a format that supports insight and decision making. So let's talk a little bit more about the Microsoft suite of business intelligence tools. Two of them we're going to talk about today. One is Power Query and the other is Power Pivot. These are tools that are sitting and living and breathing in your desktop right now inside of your Excel application. And we'll be looking at those in detail. Power View is a visualization tool that's also inside of Excel, and the Power BI desktop and the Power BI suite of services that Microsoft offers right now sits outside of the scope of what we'll be able to talk about today. But it is a suite of development and visualization tools that really moves beyond Excel in terms of the type of analysis you can do, the types of visualizations you can do, building more robust dashboards. But that's really for another time. What we want to concentrate on today is using the tools that you have on your desktop right now to build the dashboards that you're going to need tomorrow. So Power Query, it's a data gathering tool in Excel. It can connect to your data sources, and it can combine, transform, and shape your information to be used in analysis. One of the things that you're going to find out as you start moving down this road of gathering more data from the different systems that you have is, first of all, data is going to live all over the place. Data lives in your billing system. Data lives in your clinical system. Data lives in your scheduling system. Data lives in your HR system. It lives in psyches. It lives all over the place. And sometimes it's clean and easy to work with, and sometimes it's a little bit messy and difficult to work with. What we do know is that we're going to have to end up figuring out ways that we can combine data from different sources to make the dashboards that we really need to inform our business and our practice. And Power Query, I think, is a pretty intuitive and very robust tool for allowing you to gather, transform, and bring your data into an environment that's useful. Second piece of the BI tools we're going to talk about today is Power Pivot. Power Pivot is an add-on in Excel that enables you to import large amounts of information to Excel to create relationships, make calculated fields, and measures to be used for analysis. So we talk about gathering your data. Power Query is a tool for that. Storing your data. Power Pivot is a tool for that. And then analysis and providing data to your end users is what we're going to develop. We'll be going over some of the basic skills that we learned in the prior two sessions. So with that, I believe we'll come back to the "Are you interested?" at the end. So right now, what I'm going to do is going to just take me a second to share my screen. 1 second. Because we're going to go live. All right, so what you should be looking at is a slide that sort of is the point that I'm going to address today. So what we've been doing in the prior two sessions is we've been taking basic data, basic billing data, and standing up dashboards that allow us to understand productivity, allows us to understand our payer mix, and allows us to understand how we're doing performance-wise by our different centers. It's really a way of taking a look at the single source of data and building the dashboards that are important dashboards that, but they're really based upon, up to today, we've been basing those on operations. And that's an important piece of your dashboarding and your business intelligence. But the new challenge that we're going to be facing pretty quickly, and some of us who are moving to CCBHC are going to be facing in the next couple months, is measuring and reporting out on metrics. So here's a simple metric at the top of the page. It's a simple metric from the CCBHC. And that is the outcome metric is the percentage of initial assessments that are performed within 10 days, that should be of, the initial call to the agency. And the second part of that is the average number of days from the first call to the initial assessment. So here we have a problem. because it is unlikely that the data that you have about when an initial assessment was performed will be in the same data set that you have about when the initial call was made to the agency. Even if it was in your electronic medical record and you had a scheduling system that recorded the initial call to the agency and a billing system that recorded the call of the initial assessment, it's not necessarily true that those two data sources are going to talk to each other. So what we have is that in the problem that I'm facing here is that I have my initial call data in an Excel spreadsheet, and I have my first assessment data in a billing system. I need to build a dashboard to monitor how well I'm doing on this metric, and so I need a single data source to build that dashboard. So what we're going to do is I'm going to walk you through a process by which we might be able to do that. All right, so the first thing is, let me bring my Excel over into here. Now, for you, some of you folks who are pretty astute, you'll notice that I had in the past been doing these demonstrations using Microsoft Excel 2013. Today, I'm using Microsoft Excel 2017. There are some additional features in 2017 that are very useful, and so I decided that I'd move up a version to show you some of those functionality. So here's the data, and we're going to post this data. You'll recognize this. We've been working with this for the last couple of sessions. It's your basic billing data. You have staff, program, you have the date, start times, all the things we talked about. Service descriptions. What is an interesting thing for us here today is that we have the initial assessment data here. So the portion of the database that we have here that we need is that the initial assessment was provided and the date that it was provided. So that's in a single data source. The other tab, which is a different data source, is the two bits of information. One is the client ID, and the other is the date of the initial call. My problem is that they sit separate from each other. I need to combine these two data sources so I can know clients, I can know programs, I can know the date of the initial call, and I can know the date that the initial assessment was provided for me to build the metrics necessary to monitor my outcome. So let me show you how we're going to do that. What I'm going to do differently today is that I'm going to show you some of the, first of all, I'm going to show you the Power Query functionality. I went to data in my 2016, and I'm going to create a query. If you're familiar with data, a query is really a set of instructions that you create for your application to reach out, to connect to the data, to transform the data if necessary, and then to bring it into an environment that you can use. You may be familiar with queries and Access. Sometimes report generators, they call them, you're able to query your database. It's really asking questions of your database and bringing the data forward. It's a very simple. This is a query tool. Now, one of the interesting things you'll see inside of Excel is that you can read from a number of different data sources. I'm going to be reading from a workbook, but you can do it from a CSV or an XML file, a text file. Here's all the databases that are supported. There's a number of databases that are supported. Microsoft Azure is supported. You have online services that are supported. Other sources, if you have SharePoint, you can read the SharePoint list. You can read from the web. So that they allow you a native connection to a whole variety of different data sources, because as I had pointed out earlier, data is going to live all over the place. And you're going to have to be able to connect to it and bring it into a working environment. And the Power Query here gives you those native connections, or at least probably more than you'll ever need to use. But today we're going to read it from a workbook. So I'm going to tell it I want to look to a workbook, and it's going to take a second. And right now I'm reading this from an Excel file that's sitting right here on my local drive. That could be living anywhere, but for the ease of use, I loaded that data to my local drive. And it's going to go out there. It's going to connect to the data, and you'll see it connected to the file, and I'm looking at two different tables. One of the tables I called the billing data table. The other one I called the call log data table. So let's start with querying. We're going to have to query these or connect to these one at a time. So let me start with the call log database. And you'll see that it brings up a real quick preview of the data. I always then go to edit because you get your full functionality inside of your Power Pivot. And you'll see that there's a couple things happening. Is that it's going to name your query for you, and it's going to start writing the instructions and saving them that is necessary for you to connect your data. Because you think about this is that once you build a dashboard, you're going to be looking at a certain set of data, last month, last year, but your monitoring requires that you refresh your data as frequently as you need to. You could be refreshing it weekly, you could be refreshing it monthly. What you don't want to do is build your data connections and your queries and transform your data over and over and over again. What we're trying to build is an analytic environment that's really sort of works itself in the background. So one of the nice features of this query language is that it's going to write and save the instructions that you'll just use over and over again. It'll point your data the same way, it'll transform it the same way, it'll bring it into your environment the same way. If you're a real geek, you can take a look at SQL code that's getting developed, but hopefully, believe me, hopefully you'll never have to do that. So once I've got my data, I have to decide what I'm going to do with it. We'll look at a couple of these functionalities that live inside of the query once I load the other files. So right now we're going to do a simple thing. We saw in the business intelligence, one is gathering your data and the other is storing your data. So I'm going to store my data. Actually, this piece of data I'm going to leave out in its original source. And all I'm going to do is create a connection to it. I could do a couple of different things. I could create a table that would be brought right into this Excel spreadsheet. I could create a connection and bring it into my data model, which I'll be talking about in a second. But for this, I'm only going to connect to the data because I don't need the data to live in this spreadsheet. I do need it to live in my data source, but I don't need it in my spreadsheet. So as you see, I said OK. It creates my query. It shows me a preview. I'm able to edit it. I'm able to view it in the worksheet. I have a whole variety of different things. So what I've done is I've gathered one portion of the data that I need, and that's the call data. So now I have to grab the data that I need to understand when my initial assessment was done. So I'm going to draw this data from the workbook. It happens to be in the same Excel file. That's for convenience sake. It could be living anywhere. And I connected to my call data table, but now I want to connect to my billing data table. So I'm going to go back to edit. And it's going to bring my data into this edit format. And you'll see a couple things. It looks very much like the data that we've been working with all along with the staff and the program and the date. I've got a series of instructions, but you'll see a couple things. This is start time. Well, that doesn't really look like a time. So what this is a what you can do with your data is you can transform your data. So I'm going to click on this. I'm going to go to transform. I'm going to go to my data type, and I'm going to tell it explicitly I want it to look like a time, and you'll see. So what I'm doing now is I'm transforming my data. I'm taking my raw data and I'm turning it into data that is more useful for the purpose that I need it for right now. The other thing that I'm going to do is I have all this data in this database. I've got about 5,600 rows, I believe, in here, but all I'm interested in is in the initial evaluations. I don't care about this other stuff because my outcome metric is specific to the call data and to the initial assessment data. I don't need all this data in my system, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to filter on this. You'll notice that this is the filtering technique that we've used right from the beginning in filtering tables. Every time I take a step here and either transform my data or filter my data, the Power Query is writing the instructions that will be used over and over again every time you update your dashboard in your visualizations. So you'll see it's cleaned it up a little bit. And right now all I'm looking at my assessment data. And that's all I'm going to do on this data. It's now time to store that data. I'm going to do this a little bit differently this time with this data set. I'm going to close and load it, but I'm going to create the data connection, but I'm going to store it in my data model. They call it a data model, and that's what it is. It is a data model. You interact with your data model through Power Pivot. So I'm going to load this, and you'll see the same thing that happens is the query is created, the data is loaded, and you'll notice that there is no data in my spreadsheet because I decided that I'm going to build a dashboard. So I don't need all the data living inside of a regular spreadsheet kind of a format because it would just be a duplication. So what I did instead is I loaded it into my data model. You'll find this little icon here that says Manage Data Model. I'm going to click on that, and it's going to take me to my data. And you can do anything with this data like you do in a data table. You can filter and you can sort. That's one of the reasons I started with tables in the first session is because it's the kind of functionality and formatting and looking at your data. The process is the same across all these different tools. One of the things you will notice, though, is that if you do the drop-down on your service description, I only have one service in here. So the information that I brought into my model or the information that I brought into Excel to build my dashboard is now reduced to only have the initial assessments. So I've staged what I need. I now have my I've connected to my two different sources of data. The problem is now I need to join them. And you're going to have to join data from different data sources all the time. There's a simple way of doing that, and I'm going to show you that. I'm going to go in and edit this query. There's a functionality here that's called Merge Your Queries. And as I start moving down to the more complicated stuff, I do want to remind people that we'll be posting the database with the two different data bases in it in an Excel spreadsheet. We're recording this, and you'll have time to bring down the recording and go through this step by step. It's going to get a little bit more complicated from here. But I think it's important for us to understand some of the capacities and capabilities that are sitting on our desktops right now. So what I'm going to do is it asks me, what do I want to do? What do I want to join? Well, what I want to join here is I want to join my client number, from my billing table to the client number on my call table. And you'll see down here that I have 283 initial calls, and I have 283 rows of initial assessments. So I know that I have the data that I need, so I'm going to say OK. And it adds a column here that says New Column. You'll see it has little outward arrows. I just need to tell it which of the data elements from the merged queries do I want. And I already have client ID in my data set, so I want the call data to be brought into my joined data set. So what I just did is I merged my two queries. I joined them on the client ID, and I was able to bring my initial call information into my data set and merge it with my data about my initial assessments. Great stuff. This is what we need. I need to join. I need to take those two different data sources. I need to bring them in a single place, and I need to have them available for me to start building my dashboards. All right, we have the data, but we need some metrics here. We need, if you were on our outcome series, we need numerators and denominators. And the first thing I need to know is how many days between the day somebody called and the day they had an initial assessment. So, still inside the query, I'm going to go add a column, add a simple column, and you'll see it's pretty straightforward. I'm going to say, okay, take the date. I know this date is the date of the assessment, and I'm going to subtract that date from the date that somebody called. I didn't have to write any code. I just had a point and click. You see it, and it'll tell you that there's no error. The syntax works. It likes what I built. I'm going to say okay, and you'll see I get this custom field. It looks pretty funky, so I'm going to do the same thing that I did before. I'm going to go into transform. I'm going to go down to my data type, and I'm going to tell it that I want it to be a whole number. So look what happened. I said, okay, this person called on August 31st, and their assessment occurred over on September 1st. So now I've created the calculation of the time difference that I need. So now I know that the time between initial call and assessment ranged from 1 day to 15 days. That's great. That's what we need, and we have our basic information. And I'm going to take this out because that's not what I wanted to do. So let's take a look at what happened. All right, so I'm good. I'm going to load this guy back up. And when I hop over to manage my data model, what I'm going to find is that I've added a field here called custom that has a number of days in it. Pretty slick. So now I have a portion of the data that I need to do my outcomes. But to do my outcomes, and if you follow along to the outcomes, you know you need numerators and denominators. So the first thing I need to know is how many assessments did we have during the period. The second thing I need to determine is how many of those assessments occurred within 10 days, which is the timeline of the metric. The third thing I have to calculate is the percentage of those that met my metric standard. And the fourth thing I have to calculate is the average number of days. Then I have to go and build my dashboard from there. Well, building a pivot table without that information makes it very difficult to create the pivot table and to create your dashboards that are simple and easy to use and update automatically. But using Power Pivot, and this is where I'm going to get a little bit more technical on you, and I will apologize because in the beginning I told people you could build dashboards without writing formulas, and I lied. We need write some very simple formulas here to get the metrics that I need. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use a language called DAX. It looks and feels very much like the Excel formula. So if you're familiar with Excel formulas, learning some of these DAX formulas will be relatively simple. So I'm going to call this something. I'm going to call this intakes. And I'm going to build a very simple formula, which is going to count my rows. And I'm going to tell it that I want to count rows on my billing table. And so let's take a look at what happened there. I created a formula that said that I have 283 rows. All right, so I know how many assessments. Now I have to figure out how many assessments happened within 10 days. Well, okay, I'm going to do a 10-day formula, and I'm going to do something, use a different formula, called calculate, and I'm going to calculate. I'm going to use my count rows. And I'm going to filter on the column, the custom column, I said. And basically what I'm telling it is only count rows where the value in my custom field is less than 10. So look what I just did. I have 283 intakes. 242 of them fell into the less than 10-day range. So now I have my numerator, I have my denominator. Let's create my percentage. So let's call this percentage met. And let's build a very simple formula, which basically says take the number of assessments that were less than 10 days from initial call, and let's divide it by the total universe. My numerators and my denominators, and you'll see suddenly I have a 85% compliance rate with my metric. The last thing that I want to do is I want to create the fourth piece of data that I need, and I'm going to call that average, and I'm going to do an average of my custom field, and we'll put that in there. We'll close that up. And you'll see that on average, we're doing our initial assessments 4.29 days after the initial call. So from the outcome model, then, I was able to, using these tools, I was able to connect to two different data sources. I was able to bring those two different data sources together and join them to create a single data source. I was able to take the two dates that I needed, initial assessment date, initial call date, calculate using query the duration between those two calls. I was able to then bring them into Power Pivot and then create the numerator and the denominator that is necessary to calculate my outcome measures and then do a simple average. So I got everything that I need to build my dashboard, so let's start doing that. So let's go to Pivot Tables. And let's put our first pivot table right here. Now I'm going back and doing things that I've showed you before. We can close the query down. And so you'll see that I've got one table here. But what's interesting, those measures that we created are now available to me for my pivot table. This is really cool. So let's do this. Let's say, okay, let's bring my intakes in here. Let's bring the number that met my 10 days. Let's bring the percentage that is met. And then let's bring in the average. So you see up here in the upper left-hand corner, what I've been able to develop is the beginnings of my dashboard. Because now I know that during the period of my data, I had 283 intakes. 242 of them were within 10 days. I met my outcome objective 85% of the time, and the average number of days from call to assessment is 4.2. Good stuff. So let's think about how we want to then build out this dashboard in the next 10 minutes or so. Well, as we've talked about before, one of the things that I'm really interested when I monitor my metrics, this is nice, but I need to understand what's happening over time. I need to know if there's trends. I need to know if our performance is improving, whether it's declining. If I'm getting poor performance, I may want to know which program I'm getting that poor performance from. So we need to build out our dashboard using our basic pivot table and pivot charting tools that we looked at before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring date into here, into my pivot table, and it's going to add a couple fields here, which I'm going to take out. All right, so you'll see that it already grouped it for me. Excel 2016 does your grouping automatically. If you remember, last time we had to explicitly go in and group on dates. 2016 groups them automatically for you. So I want to open this up, and I want to open these two up, and I've got the beginning of my metric. Now, as you may remember from last time, I don't like the formats of these numbers, and I want to make sure that these display differently. So I'm going to go back over into my pivot table controls, do my value field setting. We showed this before. Go into the number format. This is a percentage, so let's just update it to a percentage. Apply that. It'll then apply across all of the refreshes that we do going forward. The other piece is that I want to change the format of my average. So let's go ahead and do that. Do my number format. I want a number. Two decimal places is good. So I said OK. So what I have here is the beginning of my dashboard. What we're going to do is we're going to add a chart to this, and we're going to add slicers to this. The first thing, though, is we're going to add a conditional formatting to this. And I'm going to go back into Home. We showed a little bit of conditional formatting last time, but this time I'm going to do these icon sets. Cool little icons, arrows, dashes, ups, downs. I like these. I'm going to use this one here. I'm going to add it. And you're going to have to go in and tell it through format options that you want it to apply to everything. So you get good, and then, well, actually, I made a mistake. I applied that to the wrong field, so I'm going to clear that rule. Oh, I'm going to clear that rule from entire sheet. Right. This is what happens when you try to develop dashboards in front of a lot of people on the fly. So I'm going to do this one because that's really my metric. I'm going to do my dashboard. I'm going to go to my icon set. Let's select this one. Tell it that I want to apply it to everything. I'm going to show you something real quick. It's showing me here that I've got a green arrow on meeting my goal only 92% of the time. I don't want that to be my goal. I want to change the way that this works. So let's go up into our conditional formatting. Let's go into our manage rules. Oops, I'm outside of the, let's go back in here. Let's do this again, conditional formatting. Manage my rules. I want to edit my rule. And you'll see there's rules about when to apply the different numbers. Excel is going to make a best guess upon how you want to apply them, and then it'll be your responsibility to go in and fine-tune that. So what I'm going to say is I want green when we meet 100%. I want yellow for everything over 90%. And I'm going to apply that, and you'll see now 63% is 0, 92% is yellow. So you have a little bit better visual rendition of what you're looking for. So the second thing I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to create a pivot table that we're going to use for our pivot chart. We did this last time, so I'm going to go back into my Power Pivot. I'm going to launch my pivot table from there, so Excel knows that I want to create the pivot table using my data model. And I want to put it right here for now. We'll move it later. Say OK. So what I want is a simple dashboard that it's going to allow me to build a chart, a graph over time. And so I've got my metric down here, which is the percentage met. And then I'm going to go back and pull in my dates again. And I'm going to bring in the year, and I'm going to bring in the month. And I'm going to go back, and unfortunately, I have to do this over again, is to create my number format and do percentage and say good, and say OK. You remember what we did last time then is that you go into Insert. Let's insert a pivot chart. My pivot chart here is going to be a line graph. I like line graphs to show trends over time. And here it is. Let's do a couple quick things here. I'm going to go and take the field buttons off. I'm going to go into Design, and I'm going to say, oh, I like the way that looks. Let's put that. Let's go into your chart elements. Let's add a trend line. And let's take these guys here, right-hand click, format the legend. Let's move it to the bottom. And let's change the name here to be metric met. Something simple. All right. So as you can see, as we're working on our metric, is we started in June and we were doing really good, 100%, 100%, 100%. In September, we started falling off the map a little bit, and wow, something really happened. Somebody left, some situation occurred that we dropped all the way down to 40%. Somebody woke up, and we made some changes, and we're starting to climb back up again. I can't tell you how useful this is in terms of being able to watch your progress over time. Because if you had built this in the beginning and you were watching your outcome measures, in August you would be saying, wow, this is great. By September you'd be saying, oh, something's going on. And by October you would have this part of your quality improvement process. Let's add two other quick things here. Let's move this guy. Oops, I'm going to move him out of the way because we're creating a dashboard and we don't want this extraneous information. We don't want to confuse people. I do need it to exist, so I'm going to move it out over here and say OK. So let's go back to our dashboard. And if you remember from our billing data, one of the information that we had in there was about program. So as I'm monitoring my outcomes and I'm building my dashboard, one of the things that I'm probably going to want to know is how well my individual programs are doing. So let's go into this guy and let's insert our slicer. And let's bring it in over here and let's do our slicer on our program. And say OK. So that's going to go here. Now, you remember from last time is that if you want your slicer to change your view on not only this pivot table, but also this pivot table. You remember, these are two different pivot tables. This pivot table has intakes and days and percentage met and average. This one really only has the percentages. So what I need to do is I need to go into the options here, report connections, and make sure that I attach this to the other pivot table, because now what happens when I put my slicers here, you'll see that it changes by program. So I know my south side only had one, my west side clinic is at 87%, my central clinic is only at 56%. So as I'm monitoring my outcomes and figuring out where the problem might be, where I need to focus my attentions, that is a helpful tool to do that. So, you know, the last thing I might want to do is something like, let's merge and center. Let's go into a quick, let's go into here and label this outcome metric 1 dashboard. And there's other cleaning up that you could do to this and to make it look pretty. But as we walk through, we were able to create our dashboard. So as a quick review, we had a problem. Our problem was that we had data in two different places. I couldn't do the analysis. I couldn't build the dashboard that I needed to with data in two different places. I needed a single data source that I could work from. What I did is I used two of the tools that you currently have inside of Excel. One is the pivot table, the Power Pivot, to create my measures that I need to bring my data together. The other was the my Power Query that allowed me to build instructions to go out and grab the data, to cleanse it, to join it, to bring it into a single source that allows me to build this kind of dashboard. So I see that we're running up to about 10 minutes to 3, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to set aside some time before we go to questions. The PowerPoint and the presentation has been recorded. It'll be online. Here's a couple of two separate resources that you may find very helpful if you think you want to go down the road of developing some skill sets in these Power Query and Power Pivot. It probably looks more intimidating than it is. I'm absolutely certain that the skills necessary to do what I did today are well within the reach of everybody who's listening and watching on this WebEx. So I would encourage you to go take a look at it and see if this is something that will really work for you. I do know that we deploy these tools across our entire agency. They have become a critical function that we have inside of finance, inside of our quality improvement, inside of our outcome measurement. We couldn't really function very well without these tools. So with that, Jocelyn or Serena, have we received any questions that I can respond to?
Hi, David. Actually, only one question came through. It was from someone that was actually on the webinar that you did yesterday that was about this information as well. And they said that they are in Excel version 2010, and they don't see query under data on their computer. Can you?
So if you're in Excel 2010, what you'll need to do is there is a function. You'll need to go out to the Microsoft. Let me share my screen again. 1 second. You'll need to go out to the Microsoft website, and you'll need to download the Power Query. And let me see if I can, 1 second. I think I might be able to show you something here, Excel 13. Let me bring up Excel 13 because it'll look similar to, no, it didn't, it overlaid it. So what you'll need to do is it's an add-on for Excel 2010. Just Google add-on Power Query for Excel 2010. It'll take you to the website. Once you get to the website, you can download that, and then what you do is you go into your options. There is something here that's called add-ins. You want to click on that. Go down to the bottom here, and you do your COM add-ins, and you'll see that listed. You just select it, say go, and it will, you'll see it'll show something like this. It'll be unclicked. Just click it, say OK, and then what you'll see is that it won't live in data. It will look something like you see that I have Power Pivot here. There'll be a menu item that will say Power Query. Unfortunately, these functionalities really are a little bit different in each of the versions. 2010 is a little bit different than 13, which is a little bit different from 16. One of the things that I've been watching is that Microsoft has been updating these tools on a monthly basis. The most current version that I like the most and I think is the most intuitive and easiest to access is in 2017. But this functionality is downward compatible down to 2010. So go to the Microsoft, download that add-in, apply it, and it'll be part of your menu item.
There is one more question. I'm not sure if you can answer this, but someone had asked, what are your recommendations on data management if the data files are located in a different place, such as a different country?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think that it really depends on how you can access your data. So if it's data that is sitting in a data repository that you have rights to, then you might be able to use a query, say it's sitting in a database. So if it was sitting in an Oracle database, no matter where that database is, and as long as you can authenticate on that database, that is, in most cases, you need to know the server name, you may need to know the database name. As long as you have a data connection access to that data, you should be able to get to it no matter where it resides. For those folks who sometimes have services that are web-based services, where their data is being hosted by a third-party vendor, that data could live anywhere. So just as long as you have, it's your data, you own it, you have access to it, there should be no restrictions using Power Query being able to connect to it.
All right, that's all the questions for this presentation.
Okay, so I do want to congratulate you all for sticking with me for these 3 sessions. I hope you found them useful. I think that at the very least, I hope that they will spur you on to take a closer look at some of these tools. Again, I really truly believe that functionality that we've shown over the last 3 sessions is something that pretty much all of us can do without much restrictions. It will take a little bit of training and a little bit of time and a little bit of patience, but I absolutely firmly believe these are some of the critical tools that we're going to need going forward to be able to get our data, clean it up, stand it up, put it in a visualization and allow people to act on it, make better decisions, and gain some insights. So with that, I will we'll let you go a couple minutes early. Again, thank you for your interest. The recording will be online, and please take an opportunity to go back and try some of this out and gain some skills for yourself. And I'm sure I might be talking with you again down the road a bit. So everybody have a great day, and hopefully we'll be talking soon. Take care. Bye-bye.